Hello and welcome to Benefit News. You're here with me, Madeline Gore, and we are on the Benefit News podcast. We have with us Siddharth Dabi from the Center for Grower-Centric Eco-Value Mechanisms. He's an expert on climate change and carbon credits. We've been talking about carbon credits and what they are. So far, in episode 1, we covered the basics, and we left it off at what farming has to do with carbon credits. Today, we'll be looking a little deeper into that. Siddharth, welcome to the show.
Thank
so
you.
happy to have you here. We were talking about farming and what that has to do with carbon credits, how farmers can support carbon credits and climate change. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the challenge that we have, and we know we face this every day at home, is the quality of food, right?
Yeah.
The levels of nutrition have gone down. Food is heavily, with pesticides and insecticides, right? So you get a fruit from the market and you put it in your water and you will see, like a white layer on it. So this is the big challenge right now with food. Hence, we need to change our cropping system or how food is grown, essentially. That needs to change. Now, that's easier said than done because, the farmer was taught in the green revolution to use pesticides because we wanted more food. Now suddenly there is climate change, there is this whole issue with the quality of food. So now suddenly we are telling the farmer, stop using pesticides, grow it without pesticides. It's not a joke, right? Because our farmer is a smallholder farmer. This is their main business. This is their main livelihood. So suddenly leaving pesticide would mean drop in incomes. So we need to transition. And now we need to create systems that can help the farmer transition, move away from pesticides, move away from chemicals, and grow food more organically or pesticide free.
You mentioned that farmers will take an economic hit. Do you think that if you go, if you drop pesticides altogether, there will be enough food?
Yes, there will be enough food, but it will take some time because the transition process. So initially, when you start transitioning, the production yield might drop a little bit, but then there are studies that have shown that it's not like a permanent drop. It's just a drop for maybe 2 years, 3 years. But then again, the soil recuperates, regenerates, and we are able to get at least the same level of yields, if not more. There are places where we have found yields increasing than what they were compared to using chemicals. But let's say at least it will be at the same level.
So you're saying that is because the soil quality improves?
Yes, the soil quality improves because the moment you stop using chemical pesticides, and not just pesticide, but you have to change the style of agriculture.
What does that mean?
So generally, you do a lot of heavy tillage, for instance.
Yeah.
You do monocropping, for instance. You don't really rotate the crops. So these are the challenges with commercial kind of farming, right? Now, when we say transitioning, it's not just leaving aside pesticides and chemicals, but it's also about low or less tillage or completely stopping the tillage wherever the land permits you. It's about doing multi-cropping. It's not doing the same monocrop, but multi-cropping.
You mean together?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have different rows of crops that you do depending on your agroclimatic zones and your soil type, right?
Okay.
You rotate your crops, right? It's not just cropping, but you also have trees that are included into your cropping systems, right? Horticulture trees and other kinds of trees. So it's basically transforming the way you do agriculture.
But isn't tilling very important? Because the whole point of tilling is to get your soil loosened.
Yeah, but tilling at what intensity? So there are soils that might require no tillage at all.
Like?
Where you have soil which is generally very healthy, soil which is kind of loamy in nature, you don't need too much tillage.
Do we have that kind of soil in Gujarat?
Not in Gujarat. So in a lot of parts of Gujarat, you cannot completely stop tillage. You have to do tillage to some extent. But we can reduce the intensity. If it's not too deep tillage, not too heavy tillage, we can...
So, no, explain to me why this is a bad idea.
Because when you do heavy tillage, what happens is that the soil organic carbon that is stored in your soils gets released.
Okay.
Right? It disturbs the soil too much. So the microbial activity that is happening in the soil gets disturbed.
All right. So you're saying less tillage,
Yes.
more crops, more kinds of crops.
More diversity in your cropping, not just monocropping of some commercial crop that you see. Diversity. You have to go in for more plantations around your field, right? and things.
Don't a lot of farmers already do that? Like a lot of, say, your paddy fields or wheat fields will have vegetables growing on the side. Does that count?
That's happening very less. It's not happening at the kind of scale and done more scientifically.
Okay.
So we need to kind of do that much more scientifically.
You mentioned cover crops the last time you were here.
Yes. So what happens is that we grow crops in certain rows, right? And then there are times when the crop has been harvested, the soil is left barren for some time, right? Now what that does is that the harsh sun then directly falls on the soil, and that reduces the soil moisture. So if you are able to do gradually a 365-day cover of crop, it increases the soil moisture, it protects the soil organic carbon, the nutrients within it, right? And because the soil moisture is contained, you will use less water in irrigation.
Which is again very important for a state like Gujarat.
Exactly.
So what kind of crops can be used for cover cropping? I would assume small ones.
Yeah, of course, there'll be small ones. You can use, for example, a lot of crops like vegetable crops, smaller kind of tubers and things
So like
like.
methi,
Yes.
potatoes?
Not potatoes everywhere, but depends on wherever you are growing.
So how do farmers find out which crops to grow? Is that where you come in?
Yeah, so basically what happens is grassroots organizations work with agriculture experts from our agricultural universities, from the KVKs. We have organizations like Atma. They actually guide farmers based on their land, based on where they are geographically placed, what sort of cropping is the best.
And are farmers told that this is why you're doing it?
Yes, they are told why they should be adopting these practices. But in reality, adopting these practices becomes a little difficult because it comes with a cost, right? So like I said, initially your yields may drop. If you are expecting cover crop, means you are investing in those seeds and things like. So there is a cost element. That is where a lot of the times the adoption is not at scale.
Okay. So is there any way anybody can help farmers? I mean, I think the government also has an app, right, now?
Yes. The government has an app. There is, like I said, the Krishi Vigyan Kendras, the Atma, they are constantly in touch with the farmers through WhatsApp groups, through multiple different methods, through radio. So there are these, of course, grassroots organizations also have their constant training programs happening on ground. But extension work is happening. It's happening at scale. But like I said, it's not a short-term thing that immediately farmers will transit, because like I said, you are already used to a certain growing pattern and now suddenly you are supposed to change it. It takes time and it requires extra incentives beyond just training and support.
So when you say that these things will improve soil and therefore their yield, do they understand, I mean, do farmers know enough about carbon credits and how this affects the bigger picture?
No, unfortunately not, because it's a very complex subject by itself many a times to talk about, and there is a lot of lack of information on the ground. That firstly, what are carbon credits? If we change these practices, can we avail of the benefit? How can we avail of these benefits? Who can help us? Where will my carbon be sold? Who will buy? What will I get? So there's a lot of information asymmetry and knowledge gaps.
You mentioned, I think last time you were here, about how carbon credits are sold.
Yes.
So does that trickle down to the information? Is there any way to get it to the farmers? Because from what I understood, it's basically like a stock exchange.
Yeah.
So then, for instance, you compare it to an APMC.
Yeah.
So if I am buying my vegetables from my vendor down the road, I don't know which APMC it's coming from necessarily.
Yeah.
So how does that translate for farmers?
So that's the challenge, right? There is this whole gap of knowledge. Nobody knows this on the ground. Even grassroots NGOs don't know. A lot of time, even our government, agricultural departments and their
Is
other
it hard to
subsidiaries.
find out?
It's not, so you can Google this. Yes, but it's just there in such a complex way that although it is there, it's inaccessible in some sense, right? You just get sort of put off by reading the big words.
It's all data.
Yeah. So that is where, our organization comes in. We do a lot of training, capacity building at the grassroots. giving information to farmers, doing a lot of training programs with FPOs, with farmer groups and things like that. What we are also developing is now guidebooks, simple explainers on what are these markets and how can you access them.
So you will be doing this in multiple languages, I'm assuming?
Yes, in a lot of vernacular languages.
That must be fun.
Yes, it is. So we are developing cartoons, we are developing Q&As, FAQs, things like that.
All right. I think we're running out of time right now. So I wanted to ask you about how trees play a role in this, but I think we'll keep that for next time.
Definitely.
All right. And we have Siddharth again. And there we have it. We've been talking about farmers and what role they have to play in carbon farming, carbon credits, climate change. These are just the big picture stuff. We'll be going deeper into this next week. We'll also be looking at how trees can affect farmers. We all know that trees produce oxygen and they trap carbon dioxide. But we'll talk more about that in our next episode. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, do leave them in the comment section. If you like this video, please share it with your friends. If you think anybody might learn from this, share it to them as well. I'm Madeline Gore, and this is Benefit News. Thanks for tuning in.